Lonwabo, thank you for doing this interview.
Thank you so much for having me.
I really appreciate this.
Thank you.
So I want to ask you, just how did you become an entrepreneur? Was there a big bang? Were you raised to be an entrepreneur? Did you?
I would say not particularly. I'm going up until high school, there wasn't that sort of exposure to entrepreneurship at all. I guess I'm an inquiring mind, obviously thinking, what can I do with myself? What am I here for? I think those questions had stemmed from a young age, you know, just continuously asking, what is my purpose? What am I here to do?
I mean, wait. Like most little kids aren't thinking that. Why are you thinking that way? I mean, is it your parents like?
No, my mom, I guess, very corporate background, and I guess I had dreams of myself I always was a fan of Formula One. I'm not sure if you're aware of that sport. It's a car racing sport, yes. And I'd always dreamed of becoming a Formula One engineer, and that's how I ended up in engineering. But other than that, I just found that you know, I had been given the opportunity to just follow what I wanted to do in life. There wasn't that sort of limitation, even in my mom sort of bringing me up to, you are supposed to do a certain way, there's an expectation of you to do something. It was just me doing what I wanted to do. And that led me into, I guess, high school, and then continued on into university. But I think the turning point was when, I guess, I was exposed to this opportunity of becoming an Alan Gray Fellow. And yeah, that's, I guess, where I really got this idea of entrepreneurship into my mind. And once I'd actually gotten in, because I was quite surprised to have gotten in, I think that's when I started asking myself, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? What is an entrepreneur all about? And I started to inquire more about this sort of lifestyle and shift in thinking, because obviously in my mind, once I'd graduated from my mechanical engineering degree, I would go on to do a master's and then on to a Formula One job. That was my sort of impression.
That was the path that you thought you were on.
Yeah. 100%. And I think being a part of the Alan Gray Orbis Foundation, you get exposed to different things, I guess, in reading and speaking to people and people sharing their own journeys about entrepreneurship. And then I get to thinking, what can I do? There's more things that I can do than, I guess, joining a team and making sure that it succeeds. I think my sort of burning desire within was to sort of impact people, you know, impact the environment, impact people the best way that I could. And I think.
But can I stop you for a second?
Sure.
What strikes me is I know a little bit about motivational theory and, you know, modern motivation.
Yes.
And I'm curious why more people aren't asking themselves, like, why am I here?
Yeah.
Like, what is my purpose? Or maybe they are, they're just not saying it.
Yeah.
But I think that's really unusual, maybe, for a younger person in high school to be thinking in these terms, right?
Yeah, no, definitely it is. And I think there weren't many people that I could confide in with my thoughts and feelings about it. There's one person in particular I think was a huge sort of opener into, I guess, philosophical way of thinking, existentialism, and why are we here, you know, answering those questions. And it was one of my best friends at the time sort of led me onto that road. And I think in my trajectory, there was always that conflicting side of me of, no, there's more to this. There's more to us being here. There's more that I can find an understanding of what's being here. And it doesn't lie in what I'm doing. It doesn't lie in a degree. It doesn't lie in getting a job. Because then in graduating, in coming into university, I go and do an internship here and there. And then I see that people aren't necessarily satisfied with what they're currently doing, you know. And it's like adults are big babies, you know. It's like they're sort of conditioned to this place that they're not really satisfied, but they just confine and conforming to it, you know.
That amazes me.
So yeah, at that point I was just like, no, this is not for me. And I realized there was this big thing in the first year that I do not want to resolve into a 9-to-5 job. There was that sort of clarity in me. I don't know when it came.
So, but you said your mom was corporate?
Yes. Yeah.
Was she satisfied with her job, or was she just?
Well,
I mean, is she someone that's really engaged in her work?
Yes,
or is
she's deeply engaged in her work.
Yeah.
She's very. I think if I were to, where I got my like hardworking sort of ability or just sort of focus was from my mom and how she sort of engaged in her work. You know, she's always committed herself deeply to her work. But I found that was not a life I necessarily wanted to follow because it takes you away from a lot of other things, you know. But that's the way that she chose, and I appreciated her for that, and I respect that because that's what afforded me the opportunities that I have.
Right.
But definitely, I found that I did not necessarily have to put myself in that position.
So when you were exploring all this, was your mom, you know, on board? Was she supportive of you, or was she worried that you were? Was she more wanting to see you take a more traditional?
I wouldn't say she was openly supportive of my journey and the way I'm doing things. I'm not sure if she is now, but there was that sort of overriding, you know, I can trust you. I think she's trusted what I've done, what I've chosen.
She's a little nervous, but she knows you'll ultimately make it. Yeah.
Ultimately, yes, 100%, because of what I've been able to achieve in the past.
Yeah.
And maybe that doesn't align with the way that she's done things, but I think there's that overarching trust, you know. So, and yeah, I think because I've been able to sort of take my life into my own hands for quite a long time, I think even if she had her own opinions of it, I don't think it would necessarily impact what I would be doing now. Yeah.
But she wasn't discouraging you. She's not.
No.
So you didn't really think of yourself as an entrepreneur. You're sort of having these existential questions.
Yes.
You got selected for the Alan Gray Orbis thing.
Yes.
Without really thinking that you're an entrepreneur.
Not at all.
Right?
No.
So what's the criteria? Like, how did you get selected to that? Is it just purely from good grades?
No, there is, I guess, that aptitude of problem solving and being in a sort of team position, coming up with ideas. We went through such a rigorous sort of selection process where you were put into different teams and you had to solve a problem. I guess the main thing back then was the sustainable development goals and coming up with solutions for those goals. And we had to address those, and there's different aptitude psychometric tests that we had to do in the selection process. And I think from that, I don't know, my results turned out pretty well.
And you were surprised?
Yeah, I was surprised. But also I wasn't, once being in the program, it definitely wasn't a surprise to me because I could see the people that I was around and the similarities that we had, but also just the fact that we challenged things and how I challenged things, and I could sort of reflect on the way I thought in the past and how I was thinking then, and how, yes, I am one who had those sort of abilities to sort of assess a situation and sort of come up with different solutions and also just identify problems, because it does come down to that ultimately. Yeah, and I guess even during my sort of exposure in the program, I did test a few things. I came up with ideas and I shared it with people, and in validating some of my ideas, I think that sort of yearning to explore this entrepreneurial route sort of festered and manifested. And then that led me, I think, to just plunging into it straight after graduating. So that idea of not resolving to a job was very clear. I'm still sort of adamant that is not my trajectory, and that if anything, that would have sort of led to my dulling of my capabilities and abilities to, I guess, be effective and impactful. You know, I find that was a sort of dulling thing that I would have ever done. Yeah.
So in the field of psychology and motivation, the need for autonomy is like one of the most powerful psychological
100%. Yes.
needs of the human.
Yes.
You know, psychology.
Yes.
And it's amazing to me that people aren't really aware of that. Right? And when you see someone like you, a young person comes along and says, well, I want to do my own thing, they're just like looking at you, scratching their head. Like there's something wrong with you. And right? It's just powerful.
Yeah, and I see it a lot in, I guess, my peers, my friends who are not sort of in the entrepreneurial route, like that sort of idea that you doing what you want is something that we can't do at this point in time. You know, there's certain things that we have to learn and be exposed to. You need to have certain challenges that you overcome before you can sort of explore any idea. You know, you need to be financially stable. comfortable to some degree, you know, all the sort of...
you have to get more experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of the entrepreneurs that we do see in society are people who have come from a job in the first place before then they were jumping into this entrepreneurial role. And even my mentors and people that I've come across, they've always said, you know, why don't you consider going to work first and then jumping into entrepreneurship? And I was like, I don't think you need to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, there's something to be said for experience, you know, on the plus and the minus.
Yes,
because, you know, younger people that are inexperienced can be more open to new ideas that people who are steeped in a way of thinking cannot see.
Yes.
Right? So
Yes.
let's call that naivete, becomes an advantage.
Yes.
In the corporate realm, in the hierarchical realm,
Yes.
the naivete works against you.
Yes.
But in the entrepreneurial domain, it can be an advantage.
Yes, I completely agree. I think being ignorance is actually sort of useful in this sort of situation because...
But as long as you know that you're ignorant,
yes,
and
yes.
you're not just willfully, you know,
Yes,
cocky or
yes,
arrogant,
yes,
but you're
yes.
sort of like, and so I've studied this a little bit. Like the idea is, you know, everyone says, well, schools kill creativity, and they certainly do. But the older we get, the more our brains rely on just retrieving from memory to solve a problem. It's called exploitative thinking.
Yes.
We exploit prior knowledge. Because our brains become lazy. And a younger person will rely more on exploratory thinking that takes more effort. Right? So by the time you're 40 years old, you know, or let me give you a different example. When you ask someone, a 3 or 4 year old, what's 3 times 4? They'll explore to find the answer.
Yeah.
They'll start thinking about it for a second, and then they'll say 12.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they'll be all happy when they come up.
Yeah.
And by the time you're 10 years old, someone says, what's 3 times 4? And you say 12. You don't have to think about it, right?
Yeah.
And the older you get, the more you rely on that retrieval kind of exploitative thinking.
Yes.
And you do less exploratory thinking. You start to learn that this is the way the world is.
Yes.
It just is this way.
Yes. When in fact, I find in the reality it isn't, because everything is changing. Nothing is transitory, you know? So it's, everything is changing. Everything is, the moment is always constantly shifting. So your thinking has to shift. You can't limit or restrict something to one sort of moment in time.
Yeah, and I've talked about this in other conversations here at the foundation. Like, you know, education sort of teaches the young people, like, come into the logic of the present.
Yes, exactly.
And that's fine, but what they're not doing is saying, like, come into the logic of the present, but know that the logic of the present is kind of messed up.
Yes.
And there's things that we can't see that you might be able to see. And we also need you to accept things as they are, but we also need you to look for the ways in which you can improve it.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And I don't think that's happening.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the first, you know, your first startup kind of, what did you actually do that was entrepreneurial? What was the first?
I'd say I started a consulting firm whilst I was studying. That was a sort of the first leap or testing of this idea.
How old were you?
I was 20 years old.
You started a consulting firm?
And we call it a consult. It's still happening now, actually. So I would say it is. And we wanted to change the idea of what consulting is. You know, these big heads, old heads who had like tons of experience and could come up with a solution, conjure up something, write it nicely and neatly in a document, and then, you know, people would abide by whatever they had suggested. But I think, you know, that sort of consulting space is sort of confined to, you know, old corporates and established businesses. And there's a lot of wealth, as you say, that can be found in the way that young people think. And that was our sort of narrative, is that, you know, that free mind, that youthful mind is something that's useful in sort of coming up with solutions for problems.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, I would say I'm a really good problem solver when sort of given an open canvas. I'm able to see things as they are. And I think that's most important when trying to address what is there. You know, you don't come with your old assumptions. You don't come with solutions that have been proven in the past. You sort of try and create something and iterate to determine whether this can sort of fit into what is currently happening right now. And that's my first sort of way I explored entrepreneurship. And then I guess the big thing that led me to pursue it much more was my business called Lemon Style. And
Lemon Style?
Lemon Style, yes. And at the time, I was finishing off my degree, and I was in the space of like, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do? And
you create like a website or something?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
You can go check it out, lemonstyle.co.za.
Yeah.
And yeah, my friend and I was having a conversation about, you know, like ideas that we are interested in, and we were really into fashion.
So what are your, let me stop you for a second.
Yeah,
what
sure.
are your friends saying? Like, so you got one friend, you're starting this,
Lemon Style.
Lemon Style.
Yes.
That's a cool name. So you started Lemon Style. Like,
yes.
What are your other 20-year-old friends saying?
Yeah.
Are they laughing at you? They're saying, like, are you crazy? Like, that's never going to work?
I think the idea speaks for itself, ultimately. But I think the sort of pursuing it is something that I guess they don't sort of resonate with. I don't think they necessarily laugh at me about it. They're just intrigued as to, okay, you are driven to a point where you actually want to actualize this idea of yours. It's a great idea, sure, but actualization of the idea is where the hard work lies. And then I think there's that sort of misunderstanding that they may have, and that, okay, this is something that he wants to pursue, and that it's like, I don't know if I don't really care ultimately what they think. You know, they may have their impressions of what the entrepreneurial sort of atmosphere and lifestyle is about, and they may not know. I think there's a lot of ignorance around it, and I think they don't sort of justify their ignorance with an assumption of it being something that is negative or something that that is impossible. So there's definitely inquiry, but something that they necessarily don't associate themselves with being able to do. A lot of them,
right.
Yeah. So it always ends up with, okay, cool. Then what are the other things you're doing? What else are you thinking of? And I'm like, okay, well, no, this is actually the only thing that I'm pursuing at this current moment in time. These and other businesses are the only things that I'm pursuing. You know, this is what I'm focused on. I think a lot of the sort of negativity, if you may call it, comes from, I guess, the older generations of, you know, where's the money coming from? Like, what are you actually doing? Like, this is a cool idea, but how are you sustaining yourself, you know?
Yeah.
How are you keeping yourself afloat? When are you going to go study, you know? Because I've also had desires in the past of going on to study. And it's like, where's that desire gone, you know? Is that still happening, you know? So there's always inquiry on the other things that I'm doing, when I'm like, no, let's revert to the actual thing that I'm doing, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that is a symptom of South Africa. I would find that a lot of us, or maybe we could say the whole world, we don't think bigger than the sort of trajectory that we expect from a lot of people. We expect from people who are smart or who are dedicated, or who have sort of who you expect a lot from. You know, there's that specific trajectory of, you know, you're gonna go into a job, you're an engineer, you have a specific skill set which is designated to a specific role, you know. And the fact that I'm in fashion right now, it's like, well, you just studied engineering, so now why are you in the fashion business? You know, like, why are you trying to create a platform in fashion? Like, there are many people who are trying to do those things. Now you're gonna sort of waste that opportunity that you were given to sort of do that. And I guess it's just a lack of knowledge or lack of exposure, I find, because...
Or the need to conform.
Yes, or the need to conform, you know, and the lack of thinking of expansion. You know, as you said, there's a lot of, as a child, or there isn't that ability to think critically or to think philosophically about your life, why are we here? You know, that's sort of missed, and then it only comes at a later stage in your life where you're like, okay, I'm not really satisfied with what
when you
I've
have
been
a
doing.
big house and kids
Exactly,
and all these,
you know?
Yeah,
and it only comes later on in life, and thankfully, I think it came a lot earlier, where I've been asking these questions before. I had those responsibilities and things that sort of would be impacted by any decision that I would decide to make, you know. So yeah, I think being youthful is an advantage for me, and I want to leverage that, you know, and I would want to leverage it so that I don't so I make mistakes if there were mistakes that need to be made now rather than later, because this is something that I do believe is an option for everyone, you know. Yeah.
So tell me about when you got your first customer, Lemon Style. You put up a website, right? You and your friend, you built a website.
Yeah.
Tell me about your first customer.
It came much before we even put up a website. You know, you have to validate whether there's customers for what you're doing. So let me just explain. It's an online platform which delivers clothing packages to working professionals who don't have the time to do their own shopping. So we sort of meet the need of, one needs to look good in a specific environment in the workplace, but then a lot of people don't have the time to do their own shopping, or for a lot of guys, for example, they don't really desire to be shopping or looking good or whatever. So we sort of meet that need. So yeah, simply going around asking and inquiring, is this something that appeals to you? Are you one who does not like the idea of shopping? You know, there's a lot of us speaking to people, sharing our pamphlets of what we do and explaining it, and you know, people aren't understanding what we do, and clarifying and creating that 30-second pitch and validating all that. And yeah, we just landed on someone who was sort of, you know, okay, this is something that I really need. I hate the idea of shopping. So it was actually his wife who was like, my husband doesn't like shopping. He really doesn't like the idea of going out there and looking for clothes himself. And he would really need someone to go and do it for him. Yeah. And that's how he ended up being our first customer. We put something together for him. He filled out one of our surveys that we have, and we sat down with him, and yeah, we shared that experience. You know, like, I think the most important thing is, you know, speaking to your customer, understanding your customer holistically, and understanding his problem, understanding what he needs in his life, and then creating a problem or service around around his problem, you know. So that's how it ended up, and we've iterated and changed it depending on the client. Yeah.
Like the first time someone actually paid you for that, do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
What was that like?
Oh, it felt really good. It was such a reassuring feeling, you know, like this path that I've taken is something that people see value in, you know. That's ultimately all it is. It's like, you know, there's a burning desire, irrespective of who I am. The service speaks for itself. This is something that people need. This is something that people would like to be mitigated in their life, to have the service, to have someone filling in the gap for something that they really don't care about. So I think that validation and that sort of acknowledgement of something that you're doing and creating is actually useful and valuable. That was such an important feeling, you know. Yeah, and then it sort of led me to where I am now, just, you know, keeping on, because I know that there are a lot of people out there who would benefit from what I'm doing. Yeah.
Lonwabo.
Yeah.
What gets you out of bed in the morning? Like, why are you doing this? Do you want to make a lot of money? I mean, what is the vision that you're pursuing? If you can articulate that, and if you can't, it's okay.
I'm still asking my question: what am I here for? What am I meant to do? Am I meant to be doing this for people? Am I meant to be styling and providing the service for people? Am I meant to be working on a clothing manufacturing business, creating clothes from off-cut fabrics? Am I meant to be an entrepreneur? I'm continuously asking, what is this freedom affording me the opportunity to do? And I think the answer that keeps coming back is to serve, you know, to help people, whether it be in this business that I'm creating, whether it be in another business that I end up creating in the future. It's to serve. And one of the big things that I would like to share with people is this fact that you have opportunity to expand beyond your limitations that have been created from the society that we've been in. And I think it extends beyond entrepreneurship. It's not just the fact that you can leave your job and go and do whatever you want to do. It's you can be whoever you want to be. You can do whatever you want, you know? And there's that limitation that everyone puts on themselves. And I think I can't ignore the value that yoga and meditation has had in my sort of experience of life, and how that facilitates that growing, that freedom, that becoming self-realized, that ability to expand beyond yourself, because you just become essentially life, and that is what we are. You know, we're here as life to be life, and that means just to be. You know, beyond what you're doing, it just means to be here, now, in this moment. So, whether it is to do something, whether it is to be an entrepreneur, whether it is to be a 9-to-5 Joe, it's to be who I want and use my freedom and use that ability to be alive, you know, that freedom, you know. Yeah.
There's a great poem by the Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore.
Okay.
I may have butchered his first name.
Okay.
And he said, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I woke and found that life was duty. I acted and behold, duty was joy.
Exactly.
And I think that's sort of what I've got from you is this existential quest that you're on is how can I serve? What do I, which is what I sort of hear in one shape or form or another from entrepreneurs is that I'm searching for this intersection between my own abilities and interests and finding a way to make myself useful to other humans.
And in that, finding that joy, as you say. 100%.
Yeah.
And my name means joy, so I want to live up to that, you know?
Yeah, that's fabulous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lonwabo.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
This is great.